How's everyone doing? Looks like we have more and more people joining. That's always exciting.
It's very exciting. We are setting up
22,
for
27. The number keeps going
up and to the right.
up and to the right, monotonically increasing, as they say.
Uh-huh.
So, so
All
welcome
right.
everyone. I am so glad to see you all here. Good
Hey, everybody.
morning, good afternoon, good evening, good
Hmm.
night, wherever you may be in this world, as this is being broadcast worldwide from
Right.
runZero's orbiting HQ.
Hmm.
Give a minute for everyone to join. Keep joining. Hello, hello. Always a pleasure. This is always great. So, people keep joining. People keep joining. Oh my goodness. Give it one. I'm going to give it 30 more seconds. 30 more seconds. So, why don't you drop while we're waiting? Why don't y'all drop into the chat? Where are y'all from? Where's everybody coming in from today? I'm in Austin. So,
Me too,
and
Rob.
my Oh, you too. That's right. Hello. Indianapolis. Excellent.
I've enabled the Zoom chat.
Oh, wonderful.
There we go. So now we can all chat with all.
Excellent. For Kansas City, Houston area, Norway. My Norwegian pronunciation is so bad that people when I'm like, do you speak English in Norwegian? People don't even realize I'm asking in Norwegian. They think I'm speaking some other language entirely. So that's how bad my Norwegian is. Hershey, PA. I love Hershey, PA. All right, let's get started. So, welcome everyone to episode 16 of the runZero Hour. And what an episode we have in store for you today. So, coming up today is next slide, please.
On it. There we go.
The introduction of our new VP of Security Research, Todd Beardsley. And we're going to also have a deep dive into end of life operating systems in your environment and our new Starlark integrations. And then finally, our monthly rapid response roundup and query updates, which I always love talking about. But to kick it off, let's introduce Todd Beardsley.
Hey, that's
So
me.
that's you. So, Todd Beardsley, you are the vice president of security research. So
Right.
other than casting the tie-breaking vote in the runZero Senate, what do you
Wait.
do?
Well, I'm a heartbeat away from the president of security research, who does not exist. Uh, and so I'm seizing power. This is a coup, Rob. Sorry.
Mm.
This does not make me your boss. We are actually in two entirely different departments. I believe your title is Director of Applied Research, I want to say. Is that
Mm-hmm.
correct?
Mm-hmm.
And so my remit. We'll get into it. We'll get into it. We're gonna
Oh.
build up to it. So I'm gonna just advance a slide. But like most recently, before this gig,
Mm-hmm.
which I hope is more than a gig. Before this career change, I was a federale. I was a federal agent in that I worked for the federal government at an agency. So technically, federal agent. And I worked at CISA, which is the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency. So secure, it's got security in the name twice. And it was super fun. I really enjoyed it. It was really fun. It was kind of a dream job. Basically, if anyone has seen 3 Days in the Condor, the Robert Redford character is me. Like all I do is like read books. And so I was doing vulnerability book reports that would sometimes get shoveled over into the
Mm-hmm.
exploited vulnerability catalog, which is a pretty dope resource that the US government provides. I had a really good time there. I keep saying I had a good time, but this time is also good.
Well, sure. No, and I've often thought that you looked like a young Robert Redford. So that actually
Thank you. I
that
appreciate
tracks with
that.
the
I
3 days of
don't
the
think, I
contour.
think you're lying though. Uh, um, also, part of my job was basically most of the time telling people to chill the heck out on overhyped vulnerabilities on the internet. It's like, no,
Mm-hmm.
be chill. You can be chill. This is not a big deal. we're gonna have one of those later today.
Yeah, we have one coming up for that, in fact. So,
This part, this webcasting part, is probably the closest to my old job, where I just talk about vulnerabilities. I love talking about vulnerabilities. It's like my favorite thing. I also worked with a lot of our international colleagues and counterparts, and mainly, I would say, in like Australia and the UK and Canada and New Zealand, of course. Can't forget New Zealand.
mhm, mhm,
um, and they were all great people. Did things very similar to us. Between you and me, they definitely did crib off of the Kev, and so routinely they would have their
mhm,
own personal findings. But we all basically all worked together for that,
mhm,
and that was pretty great. It was like I said, it was a really good time. And then finally, the thing I'm probably most technically proud of is I was involved in um, open sourcing a couple things that we were doing at CISA, and one of those is getting the Kev data like actually mirrored out to GitHub in a reasonable way. So
mhm,
if you're like integrating Kev data, like now you don't have to go to, CISA.gov or, the DHS sphere of Gov websites, because sometimes that can be a hassle, right? Sometimes, depending on where you are in the world. And integrating off of GitHub tends to be a little bit easier if you're already developing on GitHub. Um,
mhm,
so that's where it is. And also like it gets you logging for free, like the commit logs on GitHub gets you things like when was something added to the cab, and more importantly, when was something removed from the cab, which is rare but does happen. Um, and so we have this public audit log now, which is really cool. I like that a lot. I also
excellent.
work in Vulnrichment, which is a push from CISA to ensure that CVE entries have not just the minimum info. In order
Mm,
to write a CVE, you have to have like a CVE ID number, you have to have a description, and some affected version. And that's kind of it. That's all you really need. I'm
mhm,
sorry, and a public reference. Um,
mm.
what the
That isn't the
vulnerability,
CVE itself. No,
that
that's
is not its own CVE, right?
yes.
I have thoughts on that. And what Vulnrichment does, it tries to ensure that like there's some kind of rating, like a CVSS score,
Mhm,
and there's some kind of like taxonomy tie-in to the CWE list, which is the common weakness enumeration. And so those are the two main things that it does. It also does a little sanity checking. And it's a way, and like the great part about it is that like all of that is done by CISA, and because it's on GitHub, if CISA's wrong, you can tell them. You can open a pull request. So that's pretty dope. I like that a lot. And that's about the long and the short of it. That was my deal at CISA. Do you have any questions, Rob? Spot the Fed was also a very easy game to play every day because I
are
was
you a cop? Because if you're a cop, you have to tell me. So,
if I'm a cop, you have to tell me, actually. So, I'm not a
um,
cop. I was not a cop. I was never a cop. And I wasn't a spy. And I wasn't a regulator, notably. I was
mhm.
merely a book reporter. I was just a scientist. That's all. That's all I did.
So I don't have any immediate questions, but if anyone out there has any questions, please note that the Q&A is open, and we would love to hear any questions from you. Just drop them in there, and we will do our best to get to them. I see that we have a couple
Yep.
of questions, a couple of raised hands, and I'm happy to if you want to toss your questions in the Q&A,
Yep.
we will do our best to answer them. I also saw in the chat that someone mentioned old computers, and I am contractually obligated to point out that I am a huge Amiga nerd. And if you want to talk about Amigas at some point, just drop me a line. So yes.
And now I
Okay. So
remembered how to turn on my camera. So,
oh, good. Yeah. Well, no, it was a face reveal. It was a face
right.
reveal, is what happened there. Yes.
Ta-da! Not wearing a cowboy hat.
Mm,
Um,
much more like Todd Da, but yes.
So a little less recently than SZA. Before SZA, I wasn't at SZA for very long. I'm going to tell you that right now. But I was at Rapid7 a real long time. I was
Hmm.
director of vulnerability research there, kind of similar to the job I had at SZA, sort of, but it was much more vulnerability disclosure focused.
Hmm.
I helped run Rapid7's vulnerability disclosure program. I was also the Metasploit framework technical manager for a number of years there. Um,
Hmm.
that's when I got involved in the CVE board. So I'm also a CVE board member. So you shouldn't believe me whenever I say anything about CVEs because I'm super biased. I'm not. I'm not
So
at all.
what is the CVE board actually? Can you dig into that a little bit?
Sure. The CVE board is a volunteer organization.
Hmm.
It's a group of volunteers that are charged with the care and feeding of the CVE program. And so we do things like say like, hey, we should have an automated API for CNAs, which are CVE numbering authorities, to invent and populate the CVE list directly. And then that happened. So that was great. So the CVE API is out there now. If you are a CVE numbering authority, you almost certainly are aware of it and are using it.
Hmm.
Um, and if you don't know how to use it, please let me know and I will help you. Um, it's we do a lot of things and like I think most recently we had a big revision of the rules of like what's in and out for CVEs, what are the minimum requirements for CVEs, a bunch of like real weird corner cases on like I don't know, on just like vulnerability things, right?
Hmm.
And so we make sure that the CVE program is marching ever forward into history,
Hmm. Hmm.
and, and it's pretty fun. Maybe not into history, well, future history.
Future
Um,
history. There we go.
yep.
Twirling, twirling, twirling towards freedom.
Right, free, towards freedom. There's a great chat going on about old computers that I'm paying no attention to, so I hope you're.
Yes, yes. I know. I'm. It is. I'm very tempted. Yes, yes.
Also, chat I think is open on the YouTube side as well. So if you're not signed
Okay.
in, you can chat on YouTube.
Speaking of old computers, though, continue talking about yourself. So.
Oh, thank you. I am technically an old computer. I am slightly younger than Unix, but only by a little bit, I think. I was born into a world without Unix, which is
If you
why
could even call that a world.
I know it was a dark time. Um, but yeah, so I do a lot of work on the CVE. Well, I do some work with the CVE program. I've got a board meeting right after this, actually, for the CVE board. And so I'll be ducking in there and having opinions. Um, I guess how are we on time? Well, we're doing good on time. So, and going back to the Rapid7 stuff specifically, like I wrote a bunch of research papers which
Hmm.
is a habit that I kind of fell out of when I was in Fed land. Turns out writing and publishing things when you're a Fed takes a long time and
Hmm.
loads and loads of editors, and that like ends up being great. It just takes forever. So one of the cool things I did at Rapid7 was the Under the Hoodie series, which was all about like it's basically pen testing war stories, which are themselves like just
Hmm.
for fun. But then
Hmm.
we tease out like what were like the common things that pen testers did, and like what were the weird things that pen testers did, and like all of that, right? So that was a pretty good series. Go look it up. We had a whole bunch of videos. We had a bunch of like fake anonymized, I guess like NBC Dateline style interviews with people in shadow, like talking about like the crimes that they did. They weren't really crimes, they were pen testing. And those were great because we were just looking for the aesthetic of it and not actually anonymizing people. And so, like, I think
Hmm.
within an hour of releasing the first one, someone had just like dialed up all the contrasts and said, "Hey, I know that guy. That's Show Love." So that was pretty funny. I like that a lot. I'm very glad we weren't actually trying to use it for anonymization.
Hmm. Hmm.
But
And
yeah,
now
but
you're
now
here.
the time, and all of that is dead to me. I am now
Hmm.
1,000% in on runZero. I really liked runZero before I started here, and also I still like it. Um,
Hmm.
because,
I. Yeah.
okay.
Oh,
I mean,
I
you
always say
like
it's like I sound like a broken record, but it's I really do. I think it's super cool. I love working on it. It's yeah, yeah.
So the
I really love
runZero
it here.
platform is amazing. It's incredible. It's shocking. It gives like I don't think I've ever quite had like such the emotional response to
Hmm.
using a security product as I have with run with the runZero platform.
Hmm.
the coolest things about it, I think, is that we're pretty good at picking out like oddball OT, operational
Hmm.
technology, industrial control systems, Internet of Things stuff.
Hmm.
Really like that a lot. I like that there's a free tier a lot. Um,
Hmm.
oh, don't tell anyone. And there's a free tier. You're very limited on what you can do with it. But like it's like I really like that pipeline too, right? Of like, oh,
Hmm.
we have this free tier that you can use in your house, which you definitely should use in your house. You'll find all
Hmm.
kids crazy stuff. If your kids are like hooking things up to your network and not telling you, like this is how you find out.
Hmm. Hmm.
And
Hmm.
um, and so you get used to it and you kind of like and you futz around with it and see what it can do and then you're like, oh, I could actually use this at work too, and then
Hmm.
call and we'll happily sell you licenses. um it lets you really kind of like get your hands around your attack surface, your and largely your internal attack surface, which is where I think runZero platform shines, right?
Hmm.
Don't get me wrong, we've got a bunch of external stuff too and all of that. But like it's really like the real strength I think right now is in that like illuminating your land, right? Like you are,
Hmm.
and especially the first time, just like with anything, right? Like you turn on the lights and the cockroaches scatter, and like you can count the cockroaches. They go. So it's pretty dope. And ultimately, I want to make all of this boring and normal, right? Like
Yep.
it
Yep.
shouldn't be this exciting to find the
Right.
in your house. Like it should be just kind of normal. And then finally, I'm gonna be riding in on my CVU horse here. A lot of cowboy metaphors lately. I don't know. I'm really
Well,
looking.
you didn't wear the hat.
It didn't wear the hat. I know. Maybe I'll change when next time. Next time I'll wear the hat.
Next time.
Okay.
Next time. Wear the
We'll
hat.
start with the
There you
hat.
go.
So stay tuned. April 16th. Um, I expect that we're going to be doing more in the land of vulnerability disclosure.
Hmm.
Um, I think that like because we're so tied into like OT and ICS, I mean, we can't help but find vulnerabilities. And I want to like kind of make those a bit bigger deal. Because
Hmm.
they're serious and they're real. And we
Yeah.
have one
Oh
to
yeah.
talk about today, I believe.
Hmm.
That is on the docket. Did that one make the cut, the Modbus one? I don't know. I think we like had a flurry of
There was a lot of
rapid
rapid responses
responses
right there at the end.
right
Yeah.
after we finished these slides.
At press time. At press time.
Mhm, mhm,
Yes.
mhm.
Yes.
Cool. So that's it. That's me in a nutshell.
So,
Boom.
Todd, I mean, we Todd and I have been friends for many, many years, and I'm really
Uh,
glad to work with you. And
I'll go so far as to say more than 1 decade.
I, I think it's actually approaching two. Yes,
Yes.
maybe even beyond two.
I
Yeah.
think we're
So
like
it's
at
been a while.
1.95 decades right now.
Hmm. Hmm.
Yeah,
So
I've known Rob
always,
forever. We worked back in the scrappy tipping point days, writing
hmm.
intrusion prevention devices signatures, and we were in DV labs and like saying like, how do we find this base 64 payload because it's base 64 and no one can find that on the wire. And and Rob said, aha, no, we can. Here's how. So
Oh, Base
be fun.
64. How I love it. Yeah, that was a good time. I'll have to dig up that talk. I gave a talk about it 15 years ago. That was fun.
Honestly,
So
Rob, it's probably it like according to the stuff I've been reading on the internet yesterday, still relevant. People need to get the gospel of like base 64 is not like hieroglyphics. Like you can definitely do stuff with it.
yep, yep,
So, all right, moving on. We have something to talk about though, Rob. It's something serious.
we do. Yes, yes. Real talk.
And the real talk is all, I gotta get my notes up here. The real talk is all about our um, shared issues around the dreaded end of life operating
Hmm.
system conundrum that we all face.
Hmm.
So the problem statement here is that turns out old operating systems are old.
Hmm.
And manufacturers are, and software vendors and software providers, not even vendors, right? There's like a million different, free operating systems. You don't have to buy them. Most people do for reasons. And
Hmm.
um, as they get older and older and older, like the providers of those, they don't want to be handcuffed to them forever. And I don't want them to either, right? Like you want to be able to, twirl towards freedom with these. And so, if you are not aware and you are in the sound of my voice, this year, in 2025, Windows 10, the whole thing goes end of life
Hmm.
in October of 20 in October 14th, right, of 2025. Now, Windows 10 first GA was 2015. So, good uh,
Yeah,
you
10
know,
years. Yeah.
10 years, not bad. Lots of people, but this is the thing, right? Like it has been in service for 10 years. And I guarantee you, there are people, I would hope, there are people watching this webcast right now, and their entire career has only had Windows on the desktop, right? And only specifically Windows 10 on the desktop.
Yep. Yep.
They never went through the pain of getting off of Windows 7 and Windows 8 to Windows 10, right? They never did that.
Hmm.
Because
Hmm.
they might be in year 7 of their career. They're probably middle to senior like IT
Yep.
person and never
Hmm.
had to deal with this before. So like so my heart goes out to you, and that is the Lord's work that you're doing.
So, so what does, just as a, if you can give just the elevator pitch, just
Uh-huh.
for anyone who might not be aware, what does end of life mean in this context? Like, what are we?
So
What is the impending doom that is impending?
right. It is a little overwrought, like almost everything in InfoSec. Some people prefer the term end of service because no one's dying at the end of this, right? Like, and death is
Hmm.
sad. Um, but like what happens at end of life is generally speaking, you can't count on patches for security vulnerabilities and, other updates and everything else to hit your enterprise on Patch Tuesday, right?
Hmm.
Especially for Windows. Now, there's a caveat there. Uh,
Hmm.
not always. Like when there's a real big, huge, obvious problem in Windows 10 that's like remotely exploitable and it turns into a WannaCry, um,
Hmm.
then you will probably see like a real patch from Microsoft, even after end of
Hmm.
life.
Hmm.
But you can't count on it. Like you can't count on it. And so this is Microsoft. And Microsoft was like really early in the game of like declaring end of life-ness for
Hmm.
them. They started doing it, I want to say with like Windows 95. Um, like they
Oh,
were
geez,
like,
yeah, I think it might even predate that a little bit because there was a in Germany there was a job posting for a driver developer for Windows 3.11. Apparently, there's some train control system that runs on Windows 3.11,
mhm.
and they even linked to the end of life announcement for Windows 3.11. It was pretty neat. So
Okay, yeah, and that makes sense. I bet you they backfilled those. I
yeah, they
bet you
probably
it
did. Yeah,
started in 95 and then they started saying, yeah, Windows 3.11. Like there is 3.11 to 3.11. 3.11 like the band?
3.11 like the band,
Okay.
the band for
It
workers.
said 311. I don't know. That's weird regionalisms, I guess. Um, yeah, so that's basically it, right? Like, and that's the thing that like gets, people like me and Rob worried about it is the lack of security patches. And
Hmm.
especially like lack of like your low to medium severity issues, right? Like that's never going to hit the radar. Even if you can like chain 5 of them together and do something cool,
Hmm.
probably not going to get a patch for all of them, and you likely not going to get a patch for any of them. So that's happening. It's happening right
Yep.
now. And if you're not plan if you're responsible for like desktop IT specifically, and you don't have a plan today, it's getting to be too late.
Hmm.
Like
Hmm.
you're gonna have to get on that. I've already ruined the next slide. So, uh, in other news, VMware ESXi 7X also
Hmm.
going live. This is I would I believe. Oh yeah, we actually have charged to show it. It is probably the most popular ESXi ever, just by
Hmm.
volume. It is. This is the what is VMware ESXi, Rob?
It is a Type 1 hypervisor that
Okay.
lets you host large numbers of virtual machines. This will be on the quiz later, right? I'm assuming.
Right. It is.
And oh, good. Okay. Uh,
Yeah,
and
so
yes, quite
it's
popular.
It's a hypervisor system. It's great. Everyone loves it. It's wonderful, right? This was introduced in 2020, so about half as long. Still kind of long for something like this.
Hmm.
To be in that, and that's from like 7.0 GA to whatever we're at now. I don't even remember what the current 7X is. But that whole 7 line going away. And
Hmm.
so because of all that, everyone needs to be updating the stuff, right? And like I said, if you're not planning now, it's almost too late. And don't worry, once you do this, we're going to be out of EOL OSs, right? Like everything's going to be
Hmm.
shipping,
Forever.
right?
Yes,
Right?
the problem
Yeah.
has been solved forever, once and for all.
Once and for all, like the garbage asteroid that was shot away from Earth in the year 3000. Um,
Hmm.
one pro tip, in case you haven't heard, because you've been doing IT for 7 years and never had to deal with this, don't in place upgrade these things. Like you're going to start
Hmm.
fresh, right? We're all starting fresh. And you do have to talk to your vendors. We'll talk about that in a minute, about the software that runs on that. But basically, like you're going to be building like a brand new gold update, and it's going to take a while. And you can't just tell people it's like, oh yeah, just like click the update now because like if you're go I don't know about you, I did tried to update from Windows 7 to Windows 10 and it was a disaster. It never works. And it never works for like anything except Mac OS. I think I've only ever seen success with like the major version updates with Mac OS.
Hmm.
Um, I think, and those are generally okay. Still seems a little rickety, but like every Linux is the same way, right? Like if you're going from like major version to major version of like Ubuntu or Red Hat or anything or Arch, is there
Well, Arch is a
anything in
rolling release,
Arch?
right? So you're
Right,
always on the lead,
it's a rolling
right?
release, right? There's no such thing. Gentoo, how about Gentoo? Probably not. I know Debian
I'll let you know when it stops compiling.
always made a mess of itself anytime you were trying to update Debian, mainly because of like weird apt things. So, so yeah, like once those are done, well, it turns out those aren't the only end-of-life operating systems that are lurking on people's networks. And these stats
Hmm.
come from our good friend and confidant, the indomitable Tom Sellers. Thank you, Tom. Whoop, whoop, big ups.
Yeah,
Um,
he is a national treasure.
he is. And so this is the slate of end-of-life operating systems. The top 10 most common with Windows 10 all collapsed into one, right? Because there's like a million
Hmm.
different ones. Um, as of the future, as of December 31st of this year, these are all going to be end of life. With Windows 10, it's all of it, right? That happens in October. Windows
Yep.
11, there are several versions. They're like what are they called? They're like the semi-annual versions
Hmm. Hmm.
of Windows
The
11. Some of
822.
those,
Yeah.
right, and some of those are like 2 or 3 or 4 years old, right?
Hmm.
Ubuntu is the third secret one. The third secret thing is Ubuntu 2004. That also goes end of life this year.
Hmm.
So you're gonna want to get off of that. But yeah, like all the rest of these are like kind of old stuff. The
Hmm.
percentages go drop off quite a bit. But like they do lurk in people's networks for sure.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
you know, and use runZero
And
platform to find them all, you know. Uh,
exactly. And for those the Linuxes as well, it's quite common to have those in other products you wouldn't even necessarily know, right? Like this is built on top of something else and maybe renamed, but it's
right,
actually.
right. It's like an IP camera, right? Or something like that.
Hmm.
Because like for some reason, weirdly, Moore's law also affects IoT, and so now we have entire whole operating systems that are completely functional and come with
Hmm.
that and Samba and all the rest,
Yes,
right?
yes,
So
right,
on
exactly.
some
Yes,
goofball device.
my camera can run Doom.
Right. This is just a look at Windows 10. This is the breakdown of all the versions of Windows 10 and the ones that are end of lifing around this October timeframe. As you
Hmm.
can tell, but far and away, 75% of these are like the current version of Windows 10. So good job, 75%, which means 25% of your all things being equal,
Hmm.
25% of your Windows infrastructure is already end of life. and you haven't
Okay.
solved this yet. So this chart is great, but this chart is better because it
Hmm.
excludes the one that's not quite end of life yet, right? The 20.
Right.
So of the ones, so these are all versions of Windows 10, which is a great graph, by the way. I love this graph.
Yeah, it's
And
pretty
I'm
cool, right?
sad by this graph. Of the Windows's 10 that
Hmm.
aren't the current version that will be going, and that one is going end of life October 2025.
Hmm.
All of these are currently end of life today. And
Yep.
as you can see, like they're kind of all over the place. I was trying to find out. I have some notes on this one, I think. Oh yeah, I was trying to figure out like you would expect it would be like a nice linear progression, right? It's like the
Hmm.
second most common is going to be
Yep.
the second newest, and the third most common.
Hmm.
No, it is all over the place. It looks like, yeah, the first most common is Windows 10 1809. People freaking love this version. It went end of life November 10th of 2020. So 5 years EOL.
Yep. Yep.
Now, does that mean that it's never getting security patches? Not really. I know that this version in particular has been getting occasional security fixes. But like oftentimes MSRC doesn't test old stuff. And so they
Yeah.
won't know that a vulnerability that was introduced in 2019 would even affect this, right? Now, plenty of vulnerabilities are introduced in like 2022, 2023, not going to affect this at all, but how do you know?
Right.
You got to test them all,
Right.
right? And that's why you need ESX.
There you go. Yep.
To load them all up. But yeah, they're all over the place, right? And so it's kind of interesting to me that it's so scattershot. I couldn't even find like a commonality among them. Like I'm
Hmm.
guessing it's like OEM stuff where the Windows comes preloaded. I'm thinking
Hmm.
specifically medical tech. Um,
A lot of medical tech runs Windows. Yep.
MedTech is built on old Windows, like full
Hmm.
stop. And
Hmm.
that's where you're going to find these things kind of cropping up. It's like your $1 zillion MRI like has a Windows 7, operating system
Yep.
or something.
Yep.
Usually what we're talking about. And finally, our good friends at VMware and at Broadcom, ESXi. This is the situation today. These are versions that seem to be running in people's local networks. And as you can see, well over 10% is ESXi 6.7, which is
Hmm.
has been end of life for a little while.
Okay.
So
And then
that's
there's that one poor VMware ESXi 3.5 box that's just
It's
it's
chugging
doing its
along.
best.
Yeah, it's hey guys, what
Yep.
about
Yep.
me?
Yep. It's trying hard.
So, if you're curious and you're a Run Zero platform person already, you too can go scan your own network and find
Hmm.
your EOL inventory and then do things about it. Rob, you have anything cool to say about this? This is
So as you
a
can
sample
see,
screenshot, right? So,
that is a sample screenshot. So that query that you see there, you don't have to type it all in yourself. Actually, that is a predefined query. If you go to your query inventory and click on it, it will run that query for you, and it will tell you all about operating systems that we found that are end of life. And we also support a concept of extended end of life. So some vendors will have an end of life. It's just that's it. There's no more support. Nothing will happen. The end. Versus an extended end of life where they won't port new features and they won't do cleanups or something like that, but they will still give security updates. So that if you're worried about security, and you should be, that's the real important date. So that's the OS EOL extended column there.
right. And I think so, occasionally you'll get like stability stuff in there too, but
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
it is almost entirely security at that point.
Hmm.
Cool. So what to do, right? Like, do you just cower in fear and you think, oh no, I actually already have a bunch of EOL as we've discussed here. No, there are plenty of things you can do, obviously. First off, you're gonna want to talk to your vendors that sell you $1 million software, but also you must be on like Windows 10, of 4 years ago.
Hmm.
Like,
Hmm.
and the more it's crazy to me. Like we have this notion of like computing is like generalized and like operating systems are generalized, but nope. There are very special and specialized software applications and software bundles that
Hmm.
very much don't like the new stuff
Hmm.
when it comes to operating systems. And between you and me, Rob, don't tell anybody, Zoom. Uh,
Mm.
I,
All right,
you know,
chat.
yeah, chat, we're in this together now. We're all gonna get recode. The thing is that I believe most of these special snowflake vendors are just can't figure out like how the new security paradigm works, right? And that's
Hmm.
usually the reason why they refuse to upgrade, right? And so like talk to them, right? Like you're spending a bunch of money on this. This is all
Hmm.
expensive. This is not like free open source, happy
Yep.
hippies. These are things like med tech. These are things like design system, like very specialized design systems.
Yep.
Things like human machine interface systems for like your, zillion-dollar power plant. Stuff like that is the
Right.
kind of stuff that you're dealing with. So you're spending a bunch of money with them. They will take your call. Yes.
So to answer the question that just came in, the query library, the built-in query library is if you look in the left-hand navigation pane of runZero, you will see queries, and you can click on that, and it will show you a list of all the queries that you can click on. We ship with a bunch of predefined ones that you may or may not find useful, and you can also define your own and use them. So
Yeah.
definitely check that out. They're pretty comprehensive. It's pretty cool. We actually did a major query uh, reorganization, uh, retaxonomyification of the queries, so they're a lot more consistent, which is neat. And
Yeah.
also, just to add on to the EOL stuff, so a lot of times these systems, especially in the medical and industrial and things like that, it may not be a compatibility thing per se. A lot of times, what will happen is you have to certify everything as a unit, right? So you
Mhm.
certify uh, this software running on this platform, and that's the only thing that's allowed to run in that environment. So even if you update the platform, it's now no longer certified, even if it might actually work fine, because
Yeah.
and recertification is expensive, and so yes, there's also that sort of regulatory, for good reason, right? Especially if you're doing something that if it goes wrong, it could result in loss of life or limb. But it's
So the two areas I actually do know something about are medical tech and
mm,
election security, weirdly enough. And
mm,
both of these places, they have, they are highly regulated, people die or, you accidentally elect the wrong guy. Oops. And and in these cases, right, you do want, like you say, Rob, you want to be careful, right? But in those industries, like I know
mm,
that the Election Assistance Commission and the FDA have both signaled to the vendors and the manufacturers like, no, 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 you can do security updates. Like security is important. Please just like do it the right way. So it is possible to to hang on to whatever your like medical or election certification and still do like an emergency update or something like that. As long as you have to do a bunch of stuff like you have to attest that you're only fixing a security thing, you're not introducing new functionality, you're not introducing new features, blah blah blah, all that stuff.
mm.
Very surgical, especially medical. Hey, uh,
But
but it is definitely possible. That now I will tell
mm,
you that also that vendors in both of these spaces will their first instinct is going to be like, nope, sorry, regulators say we can't do it. That is they are mistaken. And they're not lying as far as I can
mm,
tell, every time I've talked to one of these people in what do you mean these people? One of these people in these industries, I'll say like, no, no, no. Actually, FDA did produce some documentation on how to do this, or the Election Assistance Commission in the U.S. Did produce
mm,
documentation on how to like do a security, and then they're like, oh, I had no idea. I just it was received wisdom, right? Is that
yes, yeah.
everything they do is fixed and set. So it is possible to do that. Secondly, if you can't update for reasons we've just now talked about,
Mm,
because your vendor's going to be a little bit slow on the uptake on this stuff, generally speaking. Um, you can do all the usual stuff, right? You segment your networks and restrict access to the thing that you can't update, right? Um,
mm,
you ensure that like that core operating system only functionality is
mm,
not exposed, right? So like if you're running old Windows, Don't expose like NetBIOS and SMB and all the other Windowsy stuff, right? Because you probably
Hmm.
don't need it exposed, right? You're probably not doing that. You're probably not using it to go log into other Windows machines, right? So there are ways you can do that with your network segmentation and firewalling and all that jazz. Oftentimes it is a single local machine and like you're doing everything locally. And why does it even have an Ethernet connection? Like, ask
Yep.
yourself.
Hmm. Hmm.
Is the Ethernet connection there specifically just to like do reboots? Because maybe that's a risk you don't want to take. I don't
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
Um, so there's that. And then finally, and as someone who is married to a lawyer, I will always recommend talking to your lawyer. So there there can be a situation where, like, I hope nobody listening and watching this webcast ever gets hacked or ransomware or anything like that. But if you do,
Hmm.
then there's an investigation, and you have like an insurance claim, or you're working in a very regulated industry, or public pressure, right? Saying like, well,
Hmm.
how did this happen? How did this happen? We want answers, right? You don't want to be the one to go say like, actually, we didn't update our end of life operating systems, even though we definitely knew that they were running. You
Yep.
don't want to be that
Yep.
guy.
Yep.
And because that's how you get fines, and that's how your CISO gets fired. And if you like your CISO,
Hmm.
don't put them in that position. And you can get lawyers on your side on this, right? You can get the
Yep.
lawyer, your general counsel for your company has pull with people like the CFO. And if you say things like, it's much cheaper to update now and take that pain today rather than get owned later, or update like in a panic because the day
Yes.
after these things go end of life is the first day of mass exploitation of the bug I've been sitting on for 3 years, right? Like
Hmm.
just
Hmm.
waiting for end of life to happen. So
Hmm.
that will be a scary Halloween this year. These things go off in
Yep.
October. So that's the long and the short of that, I do believe. Any parting shots here, Rob?
No, I think we covered it pretty well. Well, you did anyway.
We did. We did together in togetherness. All right. Speaking of things that we definitely did together,
So custom integrations with Starlark.
is Starlink? Is it
Yeah, and
Starlink?
so every time I say it's so Subaru, their little infotainment system is also called Starlink, and so anytime I turn on my Subaru, I get my little Starlink splash screen, and it's like, and I keep thinking Starlink, and then it used to be actually called Skylark before that. So next slide, please.
So now it's impossible to remember what it's called.
Now it's impossible to you'll never remember. So Starlark is the language for the Basil whatever build system, and it's a subset, and that there's a typo there. Almost a subnet should be subset. Almost a subset of Python. Um,
Oops.
it could be a subnet of Python too.
It could be a
Um,
subdivision.
it could be a subnet of Python. So
Uh-huh.
it's not Turing complete, which means it's not technically a fully powerful programming language, but that's okay because it can still do a lot of things. And the reason why it's not Turing complete is when it was designed to be reproducible. The same Starlark script will always produce the same output, given the same environment and input and all that. And also so that you can easily parallelize it. You can run lots of different Starlark scripts at the same time and not have to worry about certain kinds of interference. And also so that you can't accidentally start a Starlark script and it just runs forever, right? So not quite Turing complete, but close enough.
That last
Next
one
slide,
is
please.
the very Turing incomplete version, right? Like that's
I
like,
mean,
yeah, you
yes,
have to
math.
be. Yeah.
So what we've done is we've given the ability to run a Starlark script that can speak to a runZero API and can run assets, can integrate with third party things. And we let you write your own, and it runs on an Explorer you control, so it runs inside your environment. But because it's Starlark, it's not going to blow anything up too much, right? I mean, buyer beware. This is you're
Right.
writing the code. You can write a bad program in any language, but you can create a Starlark script. You can send it to your Explorer. And then you can ask your Explorer to run it just like any other runZero integration, and you'll get assets, and you'll get vulnerabilities, and you'll get software, and you'll get all those things. And it just runs as often as you want. You can schedule it, do however you want. Next slide, please. And there's already some existing integrations, so check out that link there. But we have integrations for Automox, Carbon Black, DigitalOcean, Jamf, which I always, to me, sounds like the yeah, it sounds like when Nightcrawler,
Right.
teleports in X-Men,
Yes.
right? So
But only in
uh,
Jakarta.
right. Painium, Sumo Logic. So you can do all sorts of interesting things. So there's good examples that you can go check out. But if you want to just see how to do it real fast, next slide, please. You can hop over to custom integrations under your account, and then you will get this beautiful dialog called new custom integration. And if you click that enable custom integration script, you will actually get a little text editor where you can write a Starlark script. And it's
This is
such a
an
simple
adorable
thing.
text editor. Did you write this text
It
editor?
really is. It's got syntax highlighting. I mean, it's really nice. It's legit. It is a
Right.
legit little cool thing. And of course, you can also just, if you want to be lame, you can just cut and paste into there, but you can
Right.
actually do it all right there, which is awesome.
Right.
And then once you do that, you will have your own custom integration that you can start doing custom integration things with, discovering assets or talking to third party things that runZero may not have an integration for yet.
Right.
So super useful stuff. It's all fully documented. Definitely go check it out. It's a beautiful little language, and it's a really really cool project. I'm really really pleased. I did
And
not write this code, but I'm
yeah,
really really proud of it. Uh, I can take vicarious pride from
right.
the
And
engineers that did this.
knowing you as I know you, Rob,
Mm-hmm.
I know that the beauty and ease of use and cleverness of a text editor is near and
Mm-hmm.
dear. So
It's no, it really I do. I've written
this
more
could
text
not have
editors than
gone
I
out
can
the
count.
door
Yeah,
without the Rob King seal approval
yeah. No, I do
right?
love text editors. I do. I do.
Rob
So
has
yeah,
such a
please do
weird
check those out.
predilection around text editors.
I like text editors. I
No,
think
you're
they're
right.
cool.
I know you think that. Oh,
I just think they're
follow Rob on
simple.
Mastodon for much, much, much more.
Yes, yes, yep.
Next slide.
I am a joy to follow on Mastodon. Um, and so moving on, I think the time has come for
Time has
the rapid
come.
response roundup.
Rapid response roundup. Yeehaw! Cowboy noises.
Yep.
So, we grabbed kind of at random, not at random. These are ones that like kind of spoke to us of the things that we talked about in the last month, in the
Mm-hmm.
rapid responses that leapt out at us, and they were all shocking discoveries. By the way, this is card art from Arkham Horror, the living card game, a Lovecraftian card game that I really enjoy, and, and I strongly recommend it to everyone. But that has nothing to do with this. But these are three that popped up, and I think we have like three more that came up in the last 24
Mm-hmm.
hours. That's kind of
I definitely do want to save a little bit of time for the Tomcat one, just because I think
yeah,
there's
yeah,
some
yeah.
interesting discussion around that.
All right, so we're gonna blast through. Oh, we got time. But we'll blast through these. So first up, hey, remember we were just talking about VMware ESXi? Yeah, turns out there's bugs. And lucky for us, it is not yet end of life. And what are those bugs? Let me tell you. Seems pretty bad. CVE 2025 22224 is
Mm-hmm.
a bug that can be leveraged to bust out from guest to host. This is like your classic red pill situation. If after taking the red pill, Neo turned into a little tiny baby and wasn't able to do anything, which is kind of how the movie went. Spoiler alert, by the way, if you haven't seen this 26-year-old movie. Um, it is Neo is weak and terrible and is like kind of trapped in a cave in a giant uh, vertical cage of other slaves. And that's what you get with this, right? You get to escape from the guest to the host, but you kind of suck still. However, enter Morpheus in the body of CVE 2025 22225. Um, that lets you, hey, turns out you just escaped. Let me help you elevate your privileges uh, and get and break out of the sandbox, right? So like these two together is is pretty bad news. And so basically what you get, like if you're an attacker, you can break out of the guest, bop into the host, and then like power up once you're in the host and like do basically whatever you
Hmm.
want. So like real bad for shops that host other people's stuff.
Hmm.
So like, like the DreamHost and the Linodes of the world, right? Like that kind of thing. I don't know
Hmm.
if they specifically use VMware. I actually have no idea. But there are plenty of like especially smaller ISPs and hosting providers that this is their business, right? And so you don't want
Hmm.
you run one of those, patch this right away.
Yep.
22226 is related, reported as exploited. I kind of don't know why anyone would exploit this. Like it lets you spy on the host from the guest. So maybe you do that
Mm.
first, like you're casing the scene, and then you break out, and then you like are no longer a baby. That's how I imagine this works in a very Tron sort of.
Very Tron, yes. Yes.
Yes.
Before there was the Matrix, there was Tron.
Right.
We're revealing our age here, but
That's right. That's right.
and not Tron Legacy, a different Tron.
No, no, not Tron 2000, which was a giant cash grab from Disney. Um,
Good
so
soundtrack though.
that was fun. Rapid response, we did one for Craft CMS. Oh no, I hope I'm not revealing anything too sensitive, Rob, but we use Craft CMS here at runZero, which is why it caught my attention. But this bug, so it did get it got some hype on it. I want to say it's on the Kev, it's on the SYSA
It is.
Kev.
It is on
Yes,
the
it
cap.
is on the it says right there on the slide. It got added to the SYSA Kev in late February, which tells me it was definitely exploited by bad guys, right?
Mm.
And it's a subject of non-consensual exploitation, so it's not just against honeypots, not against
Mm.
pen test targets, not against red team, not part of a red team operation or anything. It was like someone popped someone else's craft CMS service without asking
Yep.
first. And so, but here's the funny thing about this bug. This bug's a little silly because basically, in order to exploit this bug, you have to already have stolen their API key
Hmm.
and to do things. And so, like, I kind of already have your API key, dog. Like, it gets you a path to like doing operating system things, right, via the
Hmm.
web,
Hmm.
which is bad, right? But like you already kind of have to be admin, and like usually, I don't know about craft. Maybe craft is wonderful. Usually, when you have like all the admin powers you could possibly need for like even just like a regular web application,
Hmm.
9 times out of 10,
Yeah.
there's going to be a path to the operating system in there somewhere, right?
Right.
Like custom scripts that just call exec or whatever, right? Like that tends to be the case. So definitely got exploited. If you're running craft, hit the update. It was funny, like they didn't mention the CVE in the release notes at the time, and so I like kind of mad at them. But luckily they're on GitHub, so I could just like pull request your release notes. Here you go, and let them know. So,
Yep.
but yeah, so there's that one. That one's fine. Whoops. And GitLab.
GitLab.
GitLab. So this was a bug. This bug is crazy. And we are definitely not going to have time to talk about it in like you could have an entire webcast just on this bug and this class of
Hmm.
bug because this
Hmm.
is a bug in Ruby SAML. And Ruby SAML is if you're writing like a Rails application, any kind of Ruby thing, right? And you want to do SAML, which is security assertion markup language
Markup language. Yeah. Yeah.
as part of your SSO, which is your single sign-on. See, like
Hmm.
it very fast. Uh, as part of your single sign-on, right? Like, and so it's part of authentication, right? This is a
Yep.
bug in the authentication part. So like usually a pretty good target, right? For bad guys and a great place for research. Like if you want to find cool bugs,
Hmm.
like look in SSO libraries. Um, what this boils down to is GitHub, not GitLab. GitHub was like, hey, we might want to use Ruby SAML for some of our authentication stuff. Let's take a look at Ruby SAML. And what do? They being GitHub, it's like, we'll put a bug bounty on it, right? And
Yep.
and what happened was someone rolled up to the bug bounty and said, like, hey, I popped it. and they're like, "Cool, how did you do it?" And they told them, and like everything went right, right? Like
Hmm.
this is the sweetheart story of why bug bounties exist. You say
Yeah.
like, "I'm thinking of doing a thing. Maybe
Hmm.
someone should check the thing, and I'll pay them to check the thing." You know? And it's like, cool. So this guy, I assume this person, his name is A Hacker One,
Hmm.
found this bug, and it turns out
At a
A
hacker one at example dot
yes,
XYZ.
XYZ. And A Hacker One found that turns out Ruby SAML uses two different XML parsers to do SAML things. And so like
Hmm.
some of it is over in ReXML, which is like a pretty standard Ruby library, and some of it is over here in Nokagiri, which is another pretty standard XML library. Well, it
Yep.
turns out when you use two different parsers to parse the same thing, sometimes
Hmm.
get different results. And that's where your authentication like envelope starts getting opened, right? And so that's essentially what it is. The write-up is really good. There's a QR code on the screen for the GitHub blog, what they found it. And it turned out like GitLab was these two vulnerabilities are GitLab specific. None of this was ever exposed on GitHub because they never actually ended up using the thing that
Hmm.
they thought they were going to use. But GitLab was using it. And so they reported to GitLab because they're like cool bros and to let them know.
Hmm.
And so, but yeah, definitely look it up. If you want to see like what an ideal bug bounty program looks like and an ideal vulnerability disclosure looks like, this is the one right now. Like this is the one I want to talk because it is incredibly complicated, but they those magnificent whatevers. I'm trying not to swear on our company webcast. They did it. They did a good job. And then there's a related bug to CVE 2024-45409, also found by a hacker one. And that's it for rapid response roundup, Rob.
Well, I do believe, Todd, that you
Uh,
had thoughts about the recent Tomcat
right.
shenanigans.
Right. So we just published something on that,
We
right?
just published a rapid response for it.
Like
Yeah.
20 minutes before we started this webcast.
Hmm.
Um, So there's been bugs on Apache. Do you happen to have the CVE handy? I don't remember what it is. There's a bunch of fours in it. Um,
I don't.
it
Not.
doesn't
Let me
matter.
grab it real fast. Yeah.
You know what? If you just go to your favorite web browser and go to your favorite search engine and just say Tomcat bug exploited, you're gonna find it, right?
Or if you
Um,
just go to the runZero blog,
or the runZero blog. That should be your favorite blog.
exactly.
I believe it's runzero.com
It's the
slash
big one on
blog.
the blog. Yeah.
It's among my favorites.
Yes.
And so, yeah, we have a little write-up on it. So the bug is real, okay? Like, let me just start off with that, right? There's a bug in Apache Tomcat. Um, you're an attacker. You can use an HTTP put to upload a serialized Java object with a particular file name if the stars are aligned, and then you can
Hmm.
get it, and then that's going to cause the object to get deserialized, and then code execution abounds, right? That's
Yep.
basically the bug. But A, it has to like the target already has to be in a pretty non-standard config. B, you have to already know the path name, so it's not going to be like generalizable across like all Apache Tomcat, right? And C, most people who are running Apache Tomcat, they tend to write like their own special sauce stuff, right, for it. And so they're like, so the attack surface is as wide as the vulnerable versions of Tomcat at its most, right? But it's actually a
Hmm.
lot more contracted than you might expect, especially you might expect from the news because the
Right.
news is going crazy on this. They're like saying like, mass exploitation everywhere, dogs and cats living together. They're being crazy about it. And as far as I can tell, and I don't have any like special, Fed vision anymore, but as far as I can tell, this is not getting widely exploited in any sensible sense of the word exploited. I guarantee you, people are getting there. You can go search for the CVE.py, and you're going to find half a dozen like exploit scripts out in the world,
Hmm.
and none of them work. against
Mhm.
anything sensible because they're all contrived examples by whoever wrote it. And some of them are like ripoffs of older ones from like 2 days ago. They changed nothing except for the author name.
Right. Yeah.
If
Yeah.
for some reason, they're probably just trying to sell it to like other bug bounties or whatever.
Mhm.
Um, but they don't work in anything other than a contrived example that is designed specifically to be exploited by that thing. And so we're not at the point of general exploitation on this or widespread exploitation. You're not going to see any like ransomware junk about it right now. It is a real bug. You should fix it. You should use
Mhm.
your platform to find your instance of Apache Tomcat and figure out like your
Mhm.
version, all that jazz, and do the thing. It will also mean, usually with Tomcat bugs, I think with this one as well, you usually means you have to recompile whatever the application is to not use the vulnerable function or just recompile it basically. I don't know if that's true with this one though. I didn't
I
get
think
far
with this one,
through it.
if you just upgrade Tomcat, you're okay. I think.
Okay, yeah. Well, that's a sight better. I didn't get that far into it because I was too angry about all the false
Yeah. Don't
accusations.
quote me on that. But I think
Yeah,
that's the impression I got. Yeah.
but it's not getting exploited widely.
Mhm.
It
So
is.
there's the
The
CVSS score is
exploit
maybe a
is
little
it's
bit.
taking the exploit is that it's taking up all of our time.
There we go. Okay.
Right.
Okay. So, but it's a real bug, and you should patch it.
And it's a real bug.
Yes.
It's a real bug. It's pre-auth, right? It's a pre-auth code exec bug involving Java deserialization. Tell me something new, Tomcat.
Yeah.
Uh, Tomcat is
All
fun.
right.
I want
So
to say there was one other one, but I think we're out of time. I don't
I think
remember.
we are out of time. So yeah, next month and next slide. Um, next
That's it.
slide.
Oh, next slide. Sorry. There we go.
There
Yes,
we
thank
go.
you.
Yes.
Subscribe.
Everybody join us next month. It is I don't want to and for any of the lawyers in the audience, this is a totally non-forward looking statement, but I can promise that there is something super cool coming next month. So I mean, it's going to be really, really cool. Non-forward looking statement may
Right.
change, but totally cool. I really, really hope to see you next month because it's going to be a lot of fun. So thank you everybody for joining us, and we will see you next month.
Hey, and I hope you enjoyed the chat for the folks that came on the Zoom. We opened the chat
Yes.
as an experiment to see if we would just get a bunch of Nazi stuff, and we didn't. So hooray!
Bye,
All
everybody.
right. Bye. Later.